Hi, engn1220. So, let's get started with this week's CAD assignment. Now, what we're going to do this week is make a container or a box for this little bit of electronics. You're going to see something like this in one of the labs that you'll be doing up in the future. This is a little Arduino device that has been built with some sensors on it. So what we'd like to do for this CAD assignment is draw up a CAD model of a housing for this thing. I happen to have here my trusty set of digital calipers, and here's the circuit board that we're going to use for this project. So the circuit board in one dimension is something, you can see that, what's that, 35 millimeters in that direction, and it's, let's say, 45 millimeters. So 35 by 45. Then in addition, the device that we're going to be housing is also, so I can show you this here. Yeah, you know, like in round figures, it's like 25. So we need to make a box that has an inside dimension of 35 by 25 by 45. And we can do that in SolidWorks in pretty easy ways. You know some tools already that you could probably get started with, but let's go through an exercise of designing and making a box that we could perhaps 3D print that would fit this bit of electronics perfectly. Here we are with SolidWorks window ready to get started. I'm going to create a new part file. And this new part file, I'm going to make the top plane visible. There we go. And I'm going to start with just a sketch on the top plane. I'm going to make a rectangle like so. There we go. I'm going to give it some dimensions. I could have just typed in the dimensions for the rectangle, but I prefer to have them shown in the sketch, whatever. And there's the vertical. Yep. And I want this rectangle, as I change it, to be rectangular. So I'm just going to make all the lines vertical, horizontal, and vertical. It does funny things if it doesn't understand that's what we want. So if we're going to make the short dimension of the box, I'm going to do this from the outside of the box, perhaps. You could do the inside dimensions to start off with, but I'm going to do the outside. Let's see, we said 35 was the sort of the narrow of the outside plan. If I add 5 on each side to that, that makes it 45, maybe a little bit more than that. So I'm going to maybe make it 48 millimeters. Oops. 48 millimeters. And the length of it, if it was 45 on the long side, I want, 5 millimeter thickness for this box should be about good. So I could do 55, but again, I want to have some sort of flexibility in there and making it a bit loose. So I'm going to make it 60. Oops. 60 millimeters. There. I've got my rectangle 48 by 60. I'll finish with that. I don't have too much going on here yet. So I'm going to go to Features, and I'm going to extrude a box. Now I said it was 25 kind of depth. Again, I'm going to want 5 millimeters top and bottom for that, and plus a little bit more. So I could make it 35, 40, yeah, maybe I'll make it 40 millimeters. There we go. There's my box. Pretty simple so far, but we can do better than that. I think I'd like to make it kind of rounded on the corners, so I'm going to just put a fillet on there. And you know, that's where you could do whatever you like for something like this. You know, it's right now it's set up as a 10mm fillet. I look at that and I go, yeah, that's a bit more curvy than I was hoping. Maybe I'll make that a 6mm. Whoops, I didn't mean to finish that up. Whoops. 6mm, I'll pick that corner, pick that corner, pick that corner. Boom. There we go. That's kind of a pretty basic looking box. But that's what I had in mind. I want something top and bottom flat. Maybe if I'm going to make the bottom, I want it to stand on something. I could put a cutaway in there, but I don't think I'll do that just yet, because I'm going to go ahead now and make this a hollow box. You know how to do that already from previous work. So I pick the shell command, and I can select surfaces to keep cutaway all the way through, but I'm not going to do that. I want it to be a closed box. So, and I want the wall thickness to be 4mm. If I make it too thick, I'm wasting material and making it heavy. If I make it too thin, I make it really delicate and flimsy. And looks like nothing has changed, doesn't it? Well, that's because the view that I've got is solid. If I look at the hidden lines, there, those hidden lines are in there, that it's a hollow box. I think I want to make whenever you have a part with inside corners and the corners are knife edge sharp like they are on this, then that's a place that will start a crack in whatever material it's made from. And so we always try to put a fillet on inside corners. And I'm going to do that. I think 6mm is too much. 1mm is a reasonable fillet. And so I'm just going to pick that. And notice it's smart enough to try and pick the entire loop. I'm going to pick that one. There. So when I go to 3D print this, it will 3D print with those nice radii on the inside. If I was making this on a CNC milling machine, then there could be a tool for the milling machine to actually cut those fillets. In general, that makes a better result. So all we have right now is kind of a closed box. Well, this won't allow us to get our electronics inside, so I'd like to make this box with a top and a bottom. And I could have made the shell open on one end, and I could have then made a separate part for that. But you know, I'd like to design the outside of my device first in this sense, so I know how big it's going to be. And I'm going to cut this into two parts. So the first thing I need to do is choose a cutting plane, and you'll see that in the features, one of the things up here is reference geometry. We haven't used this yet. And you can create all kinds of useful reference geometries. One of the things that's really helpful is to create new planes. I'm going to select plane, and as a reference, I can pick the top or the bottom. Maybe I'll pick the bottom plane. Oops, that. There. So it's got that bottom plane or that face as the reference. It seems to want to make a plane below that, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to flip that offset there. Now it's picking a plane that's kind of in the middle. And I can think, if I'm going to cut my box there, that would be a box that would have like the top and the bottom about equal in depth. Maybe that's not exactly what I want. I could make the box have like a cardboard box, a closed bottom with a close to being flat lid, and I could make that like 32, and you could see that the cut would go up there. Or I could make it like a box that has almost a flat bottom, and then the lid kind of covers over everything. So I could make it, I don't know, 12. And I think I'll do it like this. I'm going to keep the bottom kind of shallower. Then if I'm assembling electronics, maybe that makes it easier for me to fit things in. So I select OK, and I've got a new plane. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to look at a new tool. So I've made this plane, and I want to split this solid body into two parts. The first thing I'm going to do is save this. Save it as, I'm going to call it Simple Box. There we go. And now, if I go up to, you'll see that there's all the toolbars that you've been playing with a little bit, but there's a lot more tools available than just what's here in the features. And you'll see that there's tools, and there's a ton of other stuff here. And some of it is kind of mystical, and some of it isn't. And then there's also this insert thing. Now, the way to think about it is that SolidWorks views everything you do to this part as a feature. And so you'll see that sometimes, and I get confused with this, sometimes what you're looking for when you want to do something is to create a new feature, and sometimes you want to use tools on another feature. I have no idea how they split up that division. But regardless, what we want to do next is actually a feature, to create a feature called a split. And if you scroll down here under this features menu, there's shell and there's draft. You've used some of those before. And fillet and chamfer. Those are all features. And then there's this kind of unusual feature called split. If I select that, now it comes up with the dialog box, and it's looking for a trim tool, and it already thinks that I want plane 1 as my trim tool, so that's fine. And I'm just going to, it's going to use that tool to cut the part. And you'll see it graze it, and then it creates these two bodies. And if you check one of them, it'll show you which body that is and which body that is. It lets me name them, and I'm going to call that Simple Box Top. And it calls that Simple Box Top. I'm going to call that Simple Box Bottom. There. And you can eliminate the cut bodies or keep them. I'm just going to keep them. And click the green check mark. And we're done. Now it'll open up two new files. Sometimes it does weird things about the units. I'm just going to let it change the units to what the file I just made was. And there we have two new parts. So here's the original, and you can see that it's got all the features on the bottom, and it's called Simple Box. Now if I look over to the other files that have been created, then are open windows. One is this Simple Box Top, and one is Simple Box Bottom. Did I change the name somehow? Curious. I think I gave them the wrong names, or it's upside down. So this is the Simple Box Bottom, and this one is the top. This one is the top. And you can see that this is the part that I just created. Now, if I were to take these and make them, they just have two flat surfaces. And they're not going to hold together very well. They might have the same outside size and everything like I've made them, but perhaps I'd like to actually have them somehow interlock better. So I'm going to make some cut features on this mating face so that the box will actually fit together. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude a lip on this one, that will fit inside of a lip on the other. So I'm working in the Simple Box top part file, which I think I misnamed, but regardless. And I'm going to extrude a face from that surface. So I just picked extrude and I'm into the sketch mode. I'm going to use a couple of really helpful features. First is I'm going to use this convert entities tool. What this does is this will trace lines that are on some other part of the feature into the sketch that you're currently working in. So if I select that, and I can pick a line individually, and it will copy this line onto my sketch like that. And you can see that in black now, that line is now in my sketch. And you can do that one by one. The easier way to do it is I can, in this case, I can went back to that tool now. If I pick the whole face, and if I've got select chain chosen, then now it should pick, no, it only picked the outer ones. Normally you should be able to pick the inner loops as well. So that just traced what this outer shape was. Now what I'd also like to do is have kind of like a midline in this part. So I'm going to pick this other tool called offset entities. With this, it allows me to pick an offset distance, which I'm going to make 2 millimeters. And I'm going to pick that line. And you see in yellow, it's kind of traced the line outwards. I want it to go inwards though, so I'll make it like that. There. And it's going to extrude this upwards for me. And I wonder how big I should make this lip. It's currently 10 millimeters. I could give that a try, but I think that's probably too deep. Maybe I'm going to go, I don't know, 6 millimeters. Nice thing is once you've tried this, and if you don't like it, you can always fix that. Now before I'm done, I think I'd like to do another radius in here, a fillet. So I'm going to put a fillet, not a 10 millimeter. I'm going to make a 1 millimeter fillet. I'm going to put it on the inside there, and that will make the part stronger because it won't have a sharp corner on the inside. And that'll be sort of the one side of my box. And if I go to the other file that was opened, I might just save that for the moment. Save all. I'm going to go to the other part, which was this. Now with the previous one, I extruded the outside to make a shell. For this one, I'm going to have to cut away the outside. I could go back to the other sketch and I could copy or duplicate that sketch and move it here. It was easy enough to make, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and redo it. I'm going to do extruded cut. I'm going to select that plane. I'm going to do my convert entities business again. I'm going to select that. And now it's done the same thing. It traced this outer shape. I'm going to do my offset entities. Now this is going to be cut away. And if I make it 2 millimeters like I did the previous part, the other part, they're going to be exactly the same sort of thickness and they're not going to fit together. We need a little bit of clearance between those surfaces. So in this case, I'm going to cut away this part a little bit tighter into towards the middle. So maybe I'll make that 2.5 millimeters. And I'm going to pick that. And again, it tried to go out. I want to reverse it in. There we go. Now, on the part that I had just made, I went 6 millimeters, so I should probably go 6 millimeters here too. There. So I've cut that away. I have this outer bit. Now I want to do the same thing here. I'm going to make a fillet, and I want it to be 1. Make a fillet there, just to strengthen it. Now what you notice is that if the mating part fits into this, where this fillet is, well, that's not going to work, because the sharp corner that will be on it here is going to really bump into that edge. So in fact, I want to shave that off a bit on both of them, and in this one I'm going to put what's called a chamfer on, and I'll make it a 1 millimeter chamfer, 45 degrees. And if I pick that, there, does that little edge. Now if I save this and I look back to this part, so that chamfer I just did will fit in here, and the cutaway, the fillet, this part would have a hard time fitting into where that goes. So I'm going to chamfer this one as well. There. Ta-da! And that's my top and my bottom. So that's the simple box top and the simple box bottom. I'm going to save those, save both of them. And I'm going to close both of those parts. I'm going to close that bottom. And here's the original geometry that I had. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to close that. And I made a top and a bottom. Now, the next step would be to, now that we've created the outer geometry, maybe I'd like to make it just to see how it will actually fit together. I used the original part to make the outer shell and to make sure that I had the shape that I liked, and then I split it. And what that created was two new parts. The parts were related to each other from their origin, but they're still two new parts. So I'm going to make a new assembly of those parts. So I'm going to insert components and looking for the parts that I just created. Looking for the parts that I just created. Well, that's annoying. Sometimes, as you probably know, it's hard to find open recent. Oh. Sometimes it's hard to find the parts that you just worked with. Oh, right. That's my foolishness. It's looking for ASM parts. I want to look for parts. There we go. That's right. Where are we? Simple box bottom. Or simple box. I'm going to take simple box top, because I think I mislabeled the top and the bottom. There. I've put that in first. That's now my base part. No, it opened it. Never mind. Insert components. There, that's what I'm looking for. Now that it's actually looking for part. So when you look down on the bottom right-hand corner here, you can choose what kind of files it should show, and I want it to show parts. I want simple box top. There, now we're on the right path. There, and I can place it anywhere I like. And because it's the first part, it now becomes the reference part. And insert components with a new one. Pick that one. And now this lets us put it anywhere. And I'm just going to click it there. But we have no idea kind of where its location is. So I'm going to orient it. I'm going to use the mate tool, and I'm going to start off by mating that surface there with that surface there. Done. Now that's one surface. If I try and move this around, it's actually moving all over the place. It looks like it's moving up and down, but it's actually moving still horizontally on the plane with that. So I have to pick two more reference frames. I'm going to pick that and that to be coincident. I'm going to pick that and that to be coincident. There. And now if I try to move that part around, it won't move. So here we are with the box put together. It's not that exciting looking, but you can see that it is together. And what's more important is that you can focus in and decide if you're happy with those clearances. So for instance, I made the chamfer and the fillet such that they fit together. Now one nice way to inspect this is you can pick the section tool, and we'll pick it on the front plane. That's good. And where'd the part go? SolidWorks does weird things. So I am going to pick that, and there we go. So it was off in space someplace, and I have to drag it to where I want it to be. And so you can see from the section tool that I'm looking through a cutaway, and from this, if I choose hidden lines, you can see that there is this spacing here, gap, between the two parts assembled. And that's good, because that way they'll actually fit together. There. And you can play around with that to whatever spacing you like. You can go back to the original parts, and you can edit them. For instance, I'll go to the simple box bottom, and I can edit the part in place. Save and continue. Yep. So now I'm even though it looks like I'm in assembly, this little corner up here says that I'm editing the part. And if I click on the arrow here, I can see all of the features that were used in that assembly. So there was that cut, and I can look at the sketch from that cut, and I can edit the sketch from that cut. And one of the things you can see in that is I made this 2.5. What if I want to make that a little bit smaller? Instead of 2.5, I want to make that 2.3. Select that, I accept that, and now if I select that, it's rebuilt the part with now reflecting the fact that I've got a tighter gap in here. So you can do a lot of things with this. Basically, to summarize, what we've gone through is we started off, we built in SolidWorks part. We built this simple box and we cut it so that we made sure that we had two parts that would fit together. And then we did some additional features on that, on those two separate parts, so we could make them into a box you could assemble. And then we actually took those two parts that were split apart and modified, and then we put them into an assembly to put them back together. So we can then add more parts to them and make it a more complete product development kind of model. With that, your assignment this week is to make a box and make a box for something using the same features, splitting it apart and then reassembling it to see that it will actually line up and fit together. So good luck. And if you're done with this and you want to try something a bit more advanced, you'll see there's a second part to the video with something more sophisticated. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.